Wanderer to this video. Welcome to the inner labyrinth, the shadow that hides in the recesses, the places in your psyche that whisper, transform. In this video, we travel together into darkness, into the dark shadow, and through the dark night of soul. The dark night of the soul is a rite of passage, a threshold between who we were and who we will become, that forces us to experience the breakdown of our identity at the boundaries of the abyss. Yet do not despair. This is the time in which our greatest gifts lie coiled, a dancer's dream hidden in the folds of flesh. The expedition of the soul begins here in the pit of darkness, the psychological underworld, where forgotten things are uncovered, the unlived lives, the wounded hearts, the embarrassing truths that have been denied or buried. It is not, I cannot, I don't know. Mystics, philosophers, and poets have walked this path for millennia, and they have all come back with similar stories of spiritual insight and inner alchemy. Now, it is your turn to walk this path of self-discovery, to explore your hero's inner labyrinth, to meet your shadow, to slay your dragon, and return regenerated, shimmering, and whole. Over the minutes that follow, we'll enter the shadow self, the heart of darkness, that strange dark night of the soul which is the birth canal of the soul, or as Jung put it, the necessary abyss across which transformation flows. Step by step through the exercises, anecdotes, and insights that follow, you'll be guided to integrate the dark side with. Chapter 1. The Call of the Dark Night. In this first chapter, we turn our gaze inwards to examine the shadows of the human psyche and the colors of this dark night of the soul, a spiritual concept with roots in ancient wisdom that is deeply resonant in our modern understanding of the human condition. Here, the darkness of pain and suffering can be a source of inner growth, to find a place of wisdom. Dark night, the soul, and what it takes to open up to your inner life. The dark night of the soul is a state of being where you experience feelings of being unloved and abandoned, often by God. It is a period of pain and struggle. However, this darkness is not without its purpose. Many mystics, artists, and poets have drawn from this type of darkness for creative inspiration. One well-known example is the 16th century Spanish mystic Saint John of the Cross, whose writings spoke eloquently about the dark night and its associated states. He believed that this kind of suffering can eventually lead to a deeper love and connection with God, or a sense of oneness. This transformation can be described as a mystical marriage, where the soul merges with the divine. The dark night is often a response to religious devotion. The idea is that you immerse yourself so deeply in your spiritual practice that you leave behind all the outer pursuits of life. Your love for worldly things loses its power. When this happens, you become so sensitive to the spiritual world that even the smallest sight or sound is enough to enlighten you. According to the Jesuit philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the dark night is in many ways just as exciting as being in love. It is the gradual process of stripping away parts of yourself, allowing you to reach ultimate enlightenment. Despite its negative reputation, there is much else to explore about the dark night of the soul. You can learn more about this topic by reading The Dark Night of the Soul, a text and commentary, 2013, by William Stuger, an American Jesuit who was educated at Yale. But the dark night of the soul is also a reflection of how naturally complex the human condition is, how it can contain both light and shadow, euphoria and depression, elation and despair. These mystical ideas are not simply about religious enlightenment. They speak to an archetypal spiritual crisis and exist in all times and cultures. It is the reckoning of the ego that occurs when the facade drops, and what is left is our authentic selves. But the night lasts only so long. The night of the soul is not a fall into nothingness. It is a path through the fire of the self, through blood, through the earth and the dust, to the radiant beachhead of the most fundamental self, to the pilgrimage of truth, of authenticity, and peace. 2. Signs and symptoms. Recognizing when you are in the middle of your own dark night. The dark night of the soul could begin with a small, quiet voice inside of us, a vague feeling of emptiness and restlessness, a sense that something is not right with our lives. As the night darkens, so does the empty feeling, developing into a host of different symptoms. We may suffer from existential angst, be plagued with doubts, obsessions, and confusion, and experience deep despair. We may find it harder to be with others, to be creative, or to be joyful. Our spirit might feel faint and our mood low. While the experience is often framed as terrible, it can bring with it the opportunity for clarity. If you know the signs and symptoms of a dark night of the soul, it becomes easier to recognize when you are going through one and harder to be completely unhinged by it. The experience becomes an opportunity for self-discovery and self-healing, and that, ultimately, is its purpose. 3. Practicing discomfort. Welcoming discomfort and uncertainty as partners for change. In the blackness of the dark night, we feel the discomfort of many kinds: emotional discomfort, existential angst, the fear of the unknown, and that is how it is supposed to be. In that uncomfortable middle, discomfort morphs into transformation. It is the crucible of change, the space to be faced and confronted, the place where our fears and insecurities can be shaken and stirred, to emerge, no longer fearful and insecure, but reborn and renewed. And being comfortable with discomfort doesn't mean seeking out pain or restoring suffering, but of being willing to be with the discomfort that inevitably comes part and parcel with the experience of being human, knowing that it's through our struggles that we come to know our strength and our resilience, and ultimately, our peace. On the basis of these chapters, I hope you will take a fresh look at your dark night of the soul, and that you will emerge on the other side transformed with a renewed sense of meaning, wholeness, and peace of mind. Chapter 2. Meeting Your Shadow. Self. You are in the temple of the soul, the place where the wild spirits of your heart will dance, and you will hear the secrets of the soul within the whispers of the mysteries. This chapter is the beginning of self-discovery, and that begins by shedding light on the darkness and the shadow within us. This is where the miracle of transformation, healing, and wholeness resides. 1. Unveiling the shadow. Understanding the shadow self and its role in our psyche. It is what the pioneering psychiatrist Carl Jung has called the shadow self. Those unconscious parts of our psychic life that we disown, deny, or repress. Parts of the self born of our earliest attachments and conditioned by our cultures and societies, but existing just below the surface of our waking minds. They exert significant influence on what we think, feel, and do. Nonetheless, rather than being an enemy to be feared and disowned, the shadow is an essential ally in the process of psychological and spiritual maturation. It contains a wealth of undiscovered resources, a reservoir of untapped creativity, passion, and aliveness. Its separate and alienated forces, if allowed to enter our conscious awareness in a gradual and thoughtful manner, can be woven into the fabric of the personality, rounding us out and taking us towards greater wholeness. As we delve into the experience of the shadow, we find that it is never static and single-sided. It's a dynamic and kaleidoscopic state of being in the world that contains the light side as well as the dark. It is composed not only of those parts of ourselves that we love and adore, but also those that we fear and reject. Moving towards an embrace of our messy selves allows us to see that the shadow is not something to eradicate or exercise, but that it is instead intrinsic, a source of wisdom, creativity, and aliveness. 2. Shadow work. Techniques for exploring and integrating. The shadow work is the holy practice of meeting and merging with our shadow self, a confronting task that demands courage, compassion, and the capacity to befriend our darker, hidden parts. There are many methods for stepping into this space, each offering a different portal into the psyche. Another valuable tool is the practice of active imagination, which you can read about here, wherein you dialogue with your shadow, undergo a kind of inner archaeology and excavation, and then begin to integrate and, ultimately, heal. You get to discover the beliefs, feelings, fears, and traumas that led to the formation of your shadow, and you get to see that there's much more to your original wholeness than just sun or shade. Another useful approach is to involve ourselves in the work of interpreting and deciphering images and symbols by reflecting on what our own and others' dreams, fantasies, and creative work are trying to communicate to us about the nature and nuances of the shadow. We do this by working with the symbolism of the shadow. Furthermore, journaling, meditation, and expressive arts such as painting, music, and dance are all also useful shadow work techniques that bypass the repression of language and reach into the darker unconscious realms. 3. Integration. The beauty of learning to embrace all our different parts and shadows. 3. Integration. The beauty of the shadow is found inside all of us. Photo by Catherine McCann. 3. Integration. The beauty of all of our different parts and shadows. Integration. The beauty of all of our different parts and shadows. At its root, shadow work is an acknowledgement of wholeness, that I am not just my light, that I am my light and my shadow, and that I wouldn't want it any other way. This wholeness allows us to slowly start to cease judging and rejecting our shadow, and to allow it into our hearts and our life with forgiveness, compassion, and a sense of safety, to see our shadow as a power, a resilience, a strength, and a creative force. In the forthcoming chapters, we will continue this journey of self-discovery and begin to develop practical tools to help us deal with the exceptional contradictions of the shadow and the myriad dynamics of our humanity. We will do this by turning inward, reflecting, and exploring our inner landscape. Hidden riches will emerge from the interior depths, and we will find ourselves in the light, whole, authentic, and at peace. Chapter 3. Illuminating the Shadows. It is a journey of illumination that calls us to bring the light of awareness into the heart of darkness, to shed light on what we hide in the shadows of our souls, and to uncover the hidden truths of our life. 1. Shedding light on patterns. Identifying recurring patterns and themes in our lives. Typically, we experience our lives in a flow of momentary threads, stitched together by the time, circumstances, and chance of life. But occasionally, we can stand back from the fabric and see patterns. Repeating patterns, often repeating themes and motifs that connect through it all, pulled tight by subconscious beliefs, feelings, and conditioning. Telling and retelling a story about life that impacts our thinking, feelings, and behavior. When we bring the light of mindfulness to them, we begin to see the threads of our life story, the way that we're still living in the past, reacting to this morning in the same way that we might have reacted to last month or last year. We begin to see how our unconscious beliefs and emotions are impacting our relationships, our behavior, and our perception of the world around us. Now we have the power to step out of these old patterns and create a new way of living, informed by intention, integrity, and insight. 2. Healing through awareness, using mindfulness and self-compassion to navigate shadow work. As such, mindfulness, the practice of noticing what's happening in the present moment with openness and acceptance, is a true ally in shadow work. With mindfulness, we bring qualities of compassionate presence and receptivity to our experience, an awareness of thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations that allows us to meet the shadows of the psyche with clarity and compassion. Mindfulness acts as our anchor, softly noticing the arising of thoughts and emotions, allowing them space, but without identification or judgment, to come and go. We create psychological spaciousness, like an inner location where we can widen our attention to bring greater, friendlier curiosity and care to the shadows. From that view, we discover the deep stickiness of the self being healed simply through our presence, without needing to fix, change, or control anything. The concept of self-compassion, showing yourself kindness, concern, and understanding in the face of suffering or challenge, is the medicine for psychic injuries. Self-compassion soothes the soul while doing shadow work by receiving yourself. When we are caught in the throes of our own darkness, self-compassion tells us that we are worthy of love and belonging right here and right now, no matter what. Whether it's mistakes we have made, pain we are experiencing, or challenges we are facing, self-compassion whispers in our ear, "You are not alone. You are loved exactly as you are." Each moment of self-compassion thaws out just a bit more of the frost that is our self-judgment or self-criticism. And that is how we heal. This is how we awaken. This is how change occurs. 3. Forgiveness and freedom, releasing old traumas for freedom, liberation, and lightness of being. The ultimate act of forgiving, releasing the past, ends the longing for revenge, for retribution, for bringing the other person down to our level of pain. That is the greatest gift we can give and the greatest sacrifice we can make. I release thee and I forgive thee, and I free myself from a lifetime of misery and anger and pain. That's what forgiveness accomplishes in the crucible of shadow work. It allows the pain of whatever it is you need to let go of to lift. That act of forgiveness can often translate into you forgiving yourself. You let go of the blame and shame for your own shortcomings, your own mistakes, your own inadequacies, your own pain. When we let go and forgive ourselves and others, the space for healing and reconciliation emerges. We shed all the accumulated debris of our tombs and breathe in the fresh air of forgiveness. We find our sovereignty and power in this radical letting go. We step into the freedom that emerges from the relinquishment of entrapments. And in the chapters to come, we shall carry on our work of illumination, delving still further into the dark matter of the soul, discovering what lies beneath the surface and emerging, in the end, into the light, more wholly human, more free, and at peace with ourselves. Chapter 4. Integration and Transformation. Welcome to the spiritual alchemy of the soul, the dance of integration, the adventure of meaning-making, and the culmination of coming of age. In this chapter, we dive deeply into the practice of integration, shadow transmutation, and the emergence of soul-centered authenticity. 1. Embracing the journey. Cultivating acceptance and surrender on the path to integration. In this adventure to discover the self, there is a call to breathe in and allow. There is a call to let go with the flow, to accept what is as is. Acceptance is about finding peace with what is, to embrace our delight, our grief, our victories and losses, our pains and pleasures, and let go of the need to control or fight against our experiences, and instead, to embrace what is wholly and completely. And in this very acceptance, we are liberated from the need to feel a certain way, to like things, to dislike things, to attach, to resist, to fight. In acceptance of what is, we can begin to experience how every light experience actually holds within itself seeds of darkness, and vice versa. Our final method to help us move towards integration is to surrender in the trust that life will unfold in its own way. This is a very different experience to giving up or giving in. Surrender lets us rest in the embrace of the higher self, thereby allowing the flow of life to move through us, matching the ebb and flow of the tides, the seasons, and the rhythms of the cosmos. Surrender means not resisting the flow of life, not fighting the tide or bracing against the ocean of change, but instead yielding to the ways of life and trusting in the intelligence of the moment. Relinquishing attachment to our thoughts and feelings, we find our way back home to our highest self, home to a peace that cannot be described and a surrender that cannot be measured, yet are the most valuable things in the world. 2. Alchemy of the soul, transmuting darkness into wisdom and strength. We do it sitting at the scorching crucible of integration as we transform the shadows of our soul into gold. We become alchemists of the interior, transmuting anger, fear, shame, and violence into insight, resilience, and power. Jung did it. You can do it too. Alchemy of the soul begins with an invitation to engage with our shadow, to face our core with courage and humility, to throw the light of awareness into the darkened corners and unveil the unseen parts of ourselves. In the sacred healing work of alchemy, we find that our greatest trials present the seeds of our greatest rewards, that in the work of integration, our wounds reveal three qualities that can become our strengths. Our struggles become our strengths, our trials transform into treasures, and our defeats become our very victories. We open the heart to our shadows, compassionately and curiously. We understand that our shadows aren't the enemy that must be destroyed, but the ally that will support our journey towards wholeness. When we are willing to look into our own darkness and welcome it as vital soul matter, we can transform it into wisdom, strengthening our power and sovereignty, and restoring our light and body. 3. Living authentically, stepping into your power and embodying your true essence. The invitation of integration is the invitation to be authentic, to stand in our power, to show up as we are in our truth, with fearlessness and strength. Authenticity is an expression of our soul, which yearns for expression. It is about honoring and allowing that expression to be. To live authentically is to exist with yourself and in relation to yourself. To acknowledge our strengths and our weaknesses, our gifts and quirks, and recognize the light and the shadow equally. To be fully self-aware, to be accepting of who we are, and to let ourselves be seen and heard as authentically as possible. Authentic living is a radical act of self-love and self-respect that is not only possible but also necessary for your more attuned participation in the world around you. It is nothing less than your endeavor to live according to your own truth. Living authentically is a call to live in such a way that encourages others to do the same. We are sparking greater ripples of healing and liberation that travel way beyond our physical selves. We become alive to our aliveness. We become fully ourselves. The world yearns for it. We are the light. In the chapter that follows, we will stay on the path of integration and transformation, looking deeper into the art of embracing the journey, alchemizing the soul and living authentically, of accepting, surrendering, and empowering, and of accessing gold in the darkness, emerging into the light whole, wiser and at peace. Chapter 5. Navigating the Abyss. Welcome to the edge of the abyss. This chapter will take us into depths that are completely open, uncertain, undetermined, and that are the place of possibility and transformation. Let's go into the darkness, but with courage and with a sense of direction, and with trust. 1. Embracing the unknown. Finding courage in times of uncertainty. An unknown we cannot see, yet also a surface, barely scratchable. There is more and more and more to know. The courage to be and not know is something that comes from deep within the self, from a place where darkness is touched in a welcoming kind of way, and we trust the forces we don't understand that carry us into it. To accept the darkness is not an act of resignation, but of release, of leaping into the abyss, of faith and intuition, knowing that in this yielding lies the chance for profound change, and that in the unknown are infinite opportunities. Uncertainty challenges us to uncover the pliancy of the human spirit, the possibility to delve the deepest from the dark abyss and resurface into the sunshine, wiser and stronger for the experience. We cultivate an attitude of tentativeness, of wonder, of exploration and adventure, letting the currents of life carry us along. 2. The hero's journey. Recognizing your own heroic quest through the dark night. The quest of the hero is the perennial myth, the sacred ordeal, the journey through the depths of the psyche, the entanglement of conflicts and sufferings on the way to the realization of the self. In the interior abyss of darkness, the hero rises up from the depths of the soul, confronting the challenges of the way with courage, tenacity, and unremitting force. Through the first-person journey of the hero, we recognize the archetypes that underpin our own quest, the call to adventure, the tests, allies, and enemies we encounter, the road of trials, the abyss, the supreme ordeal, and the return. We learn that we are simultaneously the hero and the author of the story. We are the light and the darkness, the void or empty space, the hero and the journeyer. We are the change we desire. We are the playwright and the players. We are the audience and the world. The hero's journey tells the story of the breakthrough of the human spirit, of our power and ability to face our greatest fears and master the challenges of life. We find that we are a great deal more courageous, ingenious, and resilient than we could have imagined, and that human mortality is not the enemy we think it is. In the abyss, we find our deepest courage. 3. Trusting the process, surrendering to the wisdom of the soul's journey. We need to relax into the heart of the abyss and surrender, to allow our grip on the idea of control to relax and to trust the process of life. Trusting the process is about not needing to know what will come next, and about surrendering to the wisdom of the soul. Then we accept that it is the journey itself that is the destination, and that each pain and pleasure, each stopping place and moving on, is a part of the growing harmony of life. And in finding the surrender, we find the peace that comes with knowing that we are held in the arms of the Tao, of cosmic forces too immeasurable and too meaningful for us to be anything but driven and loved. When we surrender the need to control, we are free to encounter the fluidity of no self in the flow of life, to let go with grace and humility and to be washed by the tides of the perennial and to ride them with a quiet, steadfast heart. In surrender, we find space for a freed presence, an openness to the flow of the path, and an ability to walk the hero's way. In the videos that follow, we'll descend farther into the abyss, learn more about the shadow world that exists down there below the surface, and map out the landscape where the soul dwells. We'll be guided by the torchlight of courage, strength, and surrender as we enter the dark night of the soul, and we'll symbolically ascend from the churning vortex of the transpersonal unconscious into the light. At the end of our journey into the underworld, we stand at the last of the 3 stairways, looking back at what was learned in the abyss and looking out at the possibility that lies before us on the final trail across the desert. In the abyss, we were exposed to the realm of not knowing. In the underworld, we attended to the shades of the psyche, and in the desert, we traversed the hero's path. In the light, we return with a new kind of wisdom, a wisdom guided through courage, strength, and trust. We have journeyed from light to darkness and back again and again into the heart of who we are in hopes of healing the pangs, obsessions, and fears of our human condition, our own thirst for love and acceptance, our need to be noticed and explored, loved and cared for, and loved and honored above all else. From the depth of the abyss, we have gleaned the opportunity to be more courageous, the courage to face our fears, to delve into the nether regions of our shadow, and to embrace the unknown with curiosity, rather than trembling in its wake. From the distance of the abyss, we have learned more about a quality we have always been familiar with: resilience. The resilience to stay present with life's storms and navigate life's difficulties, no matter how turbulent, and remain standing on the other side. And we have discovered the gifts of trust, the trust to surrender to the guidance of the soul journey, to let go of the illusion of control, and to allow the natural forces of life to carry us with dignity and humility. There has been freedom in surrender, the freedom to truly be present, to fully welcome the journey, and to walk the hero path with wisdom and valor. In the return to light, we bring our gifts, the gift of consciousness, of acceptance of self, of love of self. We bring the gifts of the mysterious, the gifts of the human spirit, the gifts of trust in the process of mystery that is life, and the gift of a soul still taking itself apart. We bring with us the anticipation of the self as infinite, multiplicitous, and simultaneously whole. May we approach our journey ahead with an open heart and an open mind, as we traverse the limits of life's terrain with our courage and resilience, and a full trust in the ever-expanding light of truth, patiently waiting to guide us out of the darkness of the abyss. If you liked this video, please like and share it, because a real hero shares the inspiration.